Hi. Okay, today's first video is on what might be the most important possible discussion about improving modeling that I could probably give ever. I could talk on it again, but for this first video, and it's going to be a bit of a jumble as I'm showing you various things, but it's a very simple issue, and that is the issue of filler. Okay, so filler, this Tamiya filler and other fillers, absolutely wonderful stuff. Every modeler has it, every modeler uses it, and the amount varies on how new the model is, etc. There is a line of thinking, I think, that runs through a modeler's head that says, build it, do it, and if there's any problem, filler will sort it out afterwards. Okay. And then they set themselves up for wing joints, wing fillets, where they're just jamming in a lot of filler and then sanding an enormous amount. All of us have done it. Sometimes the actions that you take with filler are required. Okay, so sink marks, or actually ejector pin marks, ejector pin marks, sink marks. So on the side of each of these, sink marks, both sides, quite a lot, and ejector pin marks on each of them. Then joint line filling, quite extensive in some cases. I've sanded this one very nicely, so this is virtually ready for spraying, at least as far as the fuselage is concerned. The wing joint might still need more. The amount of filler varies, possibly with age of your aeroplane, but also with size. So as soon as I start heading for something like this, slightly less so, we hope, on something like this, but not necessarily. But I think as a rule one could say that the smaller the model, the more accurate. With something like this, 1/35th I think, or 1/32nd Super Freelon, you really need to do what I'm about to discuss to try and reduce the amount of, the staggering amount of filler that you could end up using. Japanese flying boat, can't remember, was this the Emily? This could be the Emily. So I really need to plan this better. My Bristol Super Freighter was my least well-planned filling aspect. Now the one thing that all of these models have in common that I'm showing you right now is rounded fuselages, which makes your life a whole lot easier. Even submarine. Even this submarine. Little bit of a flat bottom there, but it's better than that Bristol Super Freighter. So all of these models, and obviously much less so on tiny little fuselages, but the amount of filler that you could end up using could be enormous, which means you're setting yourself up for a huge amount of sanding. When you're sanding, you're damaging something. You're damaging surface detail, you're damaging a part of your fuselage, your wing joint, and in my opinion, as soon as you start actually damaging into what was good part, like let's say the part of your wing fillet that was good, except for the gap that you were trying to fill, and now it ends up being sanded substantially, is damaging the airframe. You might have a filled gap, but you've damaged your airframe. Will anyone ever know? Who knows? So you know, for a lot of what I'm saying, it's almost slightly a perfectionistic view. When you do joints, one of the things is to put tape on either side of the gap that you want to fill, so that you're not getting too much filler anywhere that you don't want it. That's a useful technique when it's relevant. For things like this, where you actually need a very nice blended surface, that's not going to help, which means you end up with a fair bit of filler, a lot of sanding, refilling, sanding, because I don't think anybody gets it right first time. This bottom part was probably filled, I don't know, four times, who knows, done that a bit long ago. But there are ways that you can prepare your fuselage, or prepare your wings, or prepare your whole, any aspects of your model, ship, submarine, anything, to have almost no filler, like this one on the fuselage. So this one has got no fuselage filler. On any of those joints. Now this little joint here, questionable, that looks like it's going to need some attention. There are sink marks, so it's not like suddenly your model is immune to needing filler, but there are things that you can do to ensure that your any particular joint is as good as it possibly can be, so that once you've finished sanding it, nothing is required. So as you are, I'm hesitant to take a big model, but let me take this one. Okay, so I've got 3 sections here. I've got that, and I call it a section because it's interrupted by something. I've got that. I have got a fin. I've got a long upper fuselage. I've got a bit of nose. So actually I've got a number of sections here. That's a pretty important section. That's possibly the most important section, because you want all parts of this fin to match when you glue it. Irrespective of what the pins did, you need to ensure that that is matching. So I'm guessing that most modelers know how to do that well, and you'd basically put tape on your model, getting all of your pins right, making sure that you've at least got a good match in front, meaning that your 2 halves are not shifted fore aft. While that is true, have you got a correct tail section, or are you sitting with a model where one side actually is 1 millimeter longer than the other? But assuming you've got things taped up nicely, unglued, you can now address the fin areas. While that's drying, you of course make sure that you don't have any step there that needs to be sanded later, or if it was such that your fuselage ends up being matching correctly, but there is a little bit of a step there, that it's the least work for you to do afterwards. If you've got a problem there, try and think it out. Why is that? Is it just bad molding, or have you actually gone and misaligned something? So now, while you've got this glued and dealt with, you don't even need to do the sanding yet. Now you can do sections, but you will be test fitting this first. And if you test fit, and you test fit such that your top surface is absolutely well matched, but you notice that your bottom surface has got a step, or over there you hold your top surface even glued. Let's say you've glued the top there, and you notice that this bottom surface has got a step. Don't glue that and then decide that filler will fix your step. Now of course you can sort of push with your hands as that's drying, push up, push down a little bit, so that even though that surface is completely glued and dried, you're adjusting this bottom surface by pressure. You can do that with pressure if it was very minimal. Sometimes you might need to remove the pins for that. But if you've got a substantial problem there, then before you do that, if the model allows on its internal structure, you know, if it doesn't have things in the way, take some stretched sprue and see if via the slightest amount of pressure you can get a piece glued in there which just opens that up. Get it glued in and check. Test fit. It takes a while in test fitting. Decide which side is even your better side. Normally if a side has slightly crimped in, that's not good. You want it to end on the perfect curve up there, and if one is a little bit down, that's the one that you need to push out a bit with some not stretched sprue on the inside, and decide how far it needs to go. So you might need a little vertical there, a little vertical there, a little vertical there, obviously within bounds of what's visible, what you can do. Or if you realize that a section might need hot water to entirely bend it out, this is a very thick fuselage, this is 2mm plastic, it's still possible, but just be aware that some sections don't lend towards hot water bending as much as thinner, easier models. So you try and make it such that by the time you are gluing a section, in fact, this is an example. I don't want to damage this sharp step that is being provided in the kit, so I definitely don't want a step there. So I try and get this section right before even the top, because the top I've got a little bit of sanding room because it's a round surface. This step must really be done correctly. And normally on these bigger things there are, I don't want to call it warping. It's not warping, it's a bit of adjustment, a little bit of pressure needed to ensure that you actually get it touching everywhere. So that step is very important. Prepare to get that right before you hit the glue. That can be dealt with afterwards. Much easier to do that. So decide what's your more important part. That's an important part right there. This is another V-shaped section, so you'd want to get lower surface done on this model. Now keep in mind there's a whole bunch of stuff. There's a cockpit inside there, there's possibly turret, so you've got to plan what you're doing inside here. Maybe this one doesn't need any sprue to push it out. It needs your manual manipulation with your hands and patience to ensure that you do a section. Even this whole section is a little bit of a long section to do all at once. Do a lesser section and choose the most difficult area at first. So this gap still allows me to get a little bit of access. So possibly here is the most important part of all, so that when you get your glue, you've taped this up so that everything is nicely aligned, and you've glued this in such that you don't need filler afterwards. A light sanding, don't damage your surface detail if you don't need to. Even if you think the amount of step that you have there is very minimal, why expose yourself to having to sand too much and damage whatever surface? Now this one's recessed surface detail, which is one of the benefits of recessed surface paneling and so on, that you are not losing raised detail, because it's a bit weird when you paint your model. You've got your raised detail in certain areas and your sanded area doesn't have it. So this, I can't remember which kit this one was. It wasn't one of the better kits. But I think I just did that. I glued in sections, making sure that each section was correct at the time. So I know that's a very long-winded way of saying try to do things so that you use the least amount of filler. If you are sanding a lot of your aeroplane, and a lot of people they're quite heavy with that filler. If you are sanding a lot of your aeroplane unnecessarily, there were ways that you could make life much easier for yourself. Now, related to the amount of filler and extra work that you do on your aeroplane is aspects of symmetry. Was it this one? I think it was this one where, yes, that's right. So just now when I referred to it, I said, okay, except for the wing fillets. Now, I don't know if that's going to come through. Yeah, that fillet there, you can see that there's a bit of a step there. Okay. Now, even though it touches without a gap, there's a little bit of a step there. So I'll come back to that step. When you are gluing, you really need to make sure about that alignment, which I did speak about previously. This aircraft is not perfectly aligned. If you look very carefully, you'll notice that this wing is actually higher in relation to the fuselage, more dihedral than this one. And yet that side there is the wing that this is raised. So this was already pushed up, which means that was a failing on this kit. One could, of course, get around that by doing a lot of test fitting and sanding a little bit, trying to get the correct dihedral on both wings. Very good to do so. But anyway, here I sit with, in fact, both wings. Both wings have got the wing part higher than the fillet part, even though for the rest it's all glued in correctly. Now, what do I want to say about that? I want to say is, you would think, okay, well, we can fill. We can just jam in a lot of filler over there and just sand it till we don't have a line there. And I want to say to you is, you have to evaluate when you're trading a problem for a different problem. So the problem that I have right now is there's a little bit of a step there. On a model of this quality, I don't regard that as the biggest of issues. If you go and fill that, you're damaging your fillet area. You're changing the curvature of your fillet. So you're trading a problem of a line, which isn't even a gap on this one, it's just a step which shouldn't be there, to one of being smooth, but you've changed the shape of the aircraft essentially. So you're going to have views, of course. Some modelers will say, well, the overall visual effect is what matters. You need to fill that, and so on. And there's many places during your builds where that'll be true. I'm saying evaluate what the trade-off is. If you don't actually need to jam the filler in there, if you don't actually need to fix a problem and have a slightly different problem as a result, then don't do it. That's the slightly more practical approach to at least finishing a model with less filler all over it. I do have sink marks there. That's sort of the sign of a lesser quality model. You generally don't find that on your better models these days. This one does have recessed panel lines. So in general, quite a nice model. Wing angle to fuselage, not the greatest, but anyway. So I don't want to make this video run forever just on that filler. But if there was one single thing to make your life easier, and one might consider that older models are the more guilty ones. But I mean, you know, this let's call this one a medium age model. This is not an old or a new, it's a medium age model, and look at that amount of filler that I needed there. Different models will require different things. Try and challenge yourself to cut back on the filler by doing better assembly planning, better structural fit. Okay, hope that was meaningful for you.